If you're new, there's something you need to see. This isn't theory. This is evidence.
When Martin Luther accused the papacy of being the Antichrist, they didn't argue with him. They changed the timeline. A Jesuit scholar, Francisco Ribera, his solution was simple: move the Antichrist out of the present and into the future. 500 years into the future. An alibi. Relocate the suspect from the scene of the crime and say, it couldn't have been me. I wasn't there. So Diana set the coordinates 1597. Now, listen carefully to what he says next.
Director, do you truly want an answer to that question? Because if you genuinely want an answer, I will give you an answer, but you may not like where it leads. Very well. If you want to understand the separation of the 70th week, you must see what the text allows, not merely what tradition assumes. The first 69 weeks unfold consecutively, yes, everyone agrees. But the 70th is different by design. It contains an abomination placed in the middle of the 7, yet the events surrounding it do not match the history of our age, nor do they match the destruction of Jerusalem alone. Therefore, the final week stands apart, a prophetic interval reserved for the end of days, when that abomination is set up and the covenant is broken. If the events have not occurred, then the week itself remains unfulfilled. It is the only conclusion the text permits. And as for the reformers pointing to Rome and declaring the Church the Antichrist, come now. They offered passion, not exegesis, accusations, not evidence. I am a Jesuit. My task is discipline, to handle scripture with precision, not with zealotry. If I say the 70th week must be distinguished, it is because the text demands discipline, not because I seek to shield anyone. They had rhetoric, I had training, and so, yes, I exercised the authority given to me to interpret Daniel as the Church required.
All right, so that's why it had to be 7 years at the end of the age. 20 days, if my math is right? Did you know there were 20 years from Cyrus to the end of the age? Do you think Daniel would have noticed that? Because, I mean, that's kind of hard to miss, isn't it? I think Daniel noticed. In fact, he did notice. Because he brings it up in chapter 4. The tree, the stump, what remains after Cyrus takes Babylon. And from that point forward, it's 20 years to the end, which makes your far-futured 7 years look a little awkward, doesn't it?
So you think a day of prophecy means a year of actual time? The day for a year principle. Ezekiel chapter 4, basically. Hold on, let me process that. Day for a year. I mean, it's creative, I'll say that much, but I'm not buying it. If you take that principle seriously, then Daniel chapter 12 would have to mean 1260 years, 1290 years, and 1335 years. To be consistent, I prefer to take the Bible literally.
Literal, huh? All right, let's walk that through together. Because nothing in your interpretation is actually literal, Francisco. Your 7-year gap, not literal. Your future covenant, not literal. Your future abomination, not literal. Your entire structure exists because you lifted 1 week out of its context and floated it into a future Daniel never described. And now you're telling me you take Daniel literally. But when Daniel said, a time, times, and half a time, you didn't take that literally. When he said 1,260, you didn't take that literally. Same with the 1290. Same with the 1335. Literal only seems to matter when it helps your structure. When it doesn't, you redefine the terms. Ezekiel 4 is literal. A day for a year. The prophets used it. History confirms it. Daniel 12 is years, and the timeline fits perfectly without bending a single verse. So if you want literal, Francisco, start with the parts Daniel actually made literal. Because the moment you do, your far future 7 years doesn't just look awkward, it disappears.
Director, you speak as though consistency is a burden only I must bear. But the prophets employed symbols. They shifted between literal and figurative language as the Spirit directed, not as your arithmetic demands. A day for a year principle may apply in Ezekiel, but that does not obligate me to drag the same device into every apocalyptic passage. Daniel's numbers can stand as days. They can stand as literal periods. There is precedent for that. And yes, there is room in the text for a literal 7 years at the time of the end. Your system insists on converting everything to years. Mine allows scripture to breathe in the genre it was written. So no, I do not concede your framework. I do not concede your arithmetic. And I certainly do not concede that the 70 weeks must end in your century rather than the final one.
Francisco, listen to what you just said. You allow symbols when you need symbols, literalism when you need literalism, and ambiguity anywhere the text won't support you. You don't have a method, you have a permission slip. You say the prophets shifted between literal and figurative as the Spirit directed.
You want truth?
But somehow, every shift just happens to protect your structure. A day for a year is optional. Historical fulfillment is inconvenient. Context is flexible. And the only thing that cannot move is your future 7 years. That isn't letting Scripture breathe. That's holding its lungs still until it fits the shape you need. And deep down, you know Daniel didn't leave a gap. You put one there. That's why your method collapses the moment someone asks you to apply your rules consistently. There it is. That moment when the room stops arguing because the truth has finally introduced itself.
Don't twist this.
Francisco, you're a brilliant man, truly. And brilliance has a habit of building very convincing architecture, even when the foundation is, let's call it, selectively chosen.
You're exaggerating.
But prophecy doesn't bend to architecture. It doesn't adapt itself to the timelines we find convenient. It simply unfolds, on schedule, whether we're ready for it or not.
You're assuming motives I never...
So, if you don't mind, let's talk about what actually unfolded. Not the version we wished for, not the version we defended, but the one Daniel wrote and history obeyed.